So, welcome back to Fan Service. We're going to be talking about Con Culture Day because we were realizing there really is a con for everything.
Yeah.
You like tying shoes? There's a tying your shoe con.
So we did a little research before this, and we're not kidding. We decided at a whim. I decided at a whim, make up a con about dragons and monsters who pretend to be humans. There's a con for that, apparently.
Of course
There's a con for people who think they're monsters to pretend to be humans. I'm not kidding you. It's like over in the Netherlands or something. I'm like,
Yes.
only the Netherlands.
See, I love this, though. Okay, so backing up just a step, we come from three really interesting perspectives on this.
Yes.
Gavin represents the new wave of fandom as far as I'm concerned. People that got into it because of media fandom. They're like, hey, I really enjoy these movies and TV shows. I think I'm going to go to a convention and meet other people like it. I, on the other hand, am a second-generation nerd, so I grew up going to conventions back when they were all the literary conventions.
About reading books.
About reading those crazy books, yeah, and have been kind of watching it evolve over time for longer than we're going to admit on the show. And then you're kind of in the middle.
Right. I will not say I did not start being a fan. I was a fan of stuff before I realized that you could be a fan of it. I would say that.
I think most people are.
Yeah. I watched Doctor Who when PBS and the Sci-Fi Channel started airing it. I was into comic books because Fox used to air like X-Men or the Spider-Man cartoons. And so I started wanting to read those, and I read more and more. And yeah, Doctor Who, I read the books and go for things. I was an anime fan without knowing I was an anime fan because, it was, again, Saturday morning cartoons. It wasn't until a Sci-Fi Channel or something said, these are animes. And then I found I was an anime fan because these were my favorite cartoons. And so from that, I got into it and I started going to conventions. I think my first convention I could say was back in the early 90s. So I'm really dating myself here, folks. It was at, I think, at one of the DoubleTrees here in Austin. And there was no guests. It was just vendors. And at the time, some people who were dressing up, pretending to be the characters, didn't know a word for it at the time. It was now cosplay. And yeah, that's where I got my start. And then, yeah, I've pretty much, except for 5 years of my life, gone to a convention every year of my life.
So the real point is that I feel that there are two kind of different kinds of conventions these days. There are the fan-run local conventions that might be the super special, like all the super specialized ones are fan-run.
Like the BronyCon.
Yeah, and then there are the big media conventions like Comic-Con and, well, DragonCon's technically fan-run, but it's
big. I consider
massive.
it a media one.
So all of the Comic-Cons, all of the Star Trek specific or Star Wars specific these days cons, anything that's got over 20,000 people is probably not being run by local fans. And I feel that these are two different kind of beasts, and they kind of attract two different types of people.
So let's look at the fan conventions, okay?
Okay.
These are the ones where anything and everything can go.
Yes.
And I find myself confused because they're normally on a smaller scale, but why don't you just do like a meetup or something? Because you're charging people money to come celebrate their fandom and to hang out with other people when they can just go to like a pub and do it for free.
Okay, because you have that all-inclusive experience for the whole weekend. You make a weekend of it. You go. See, he doesn't actually stay at the hotel for the weekend, so he's never experienced the nightlife part of fan culture at all, and therefore I think it mystifies you.
You know why? Because anytime
you
I
only
want
go
to
to
stay in a
media
hotel
conventions.
was like the anime ones where they do those weird orgy wait night raves, and I'm like, no, I don't think so.
Well, I think that another thing you
also went to some
represent is a
anime
little bit more
conventions.
conservative side of fandom, which the newer media conventions, like, you're getting a lot more conservative people. Like the old school conventions, pretty liberal in a lot of ways. Yes, physically as well. And so you don't see as much of that at the media conventions because they tend to be more family friendly. But anyway, back to the main point with these. A lot of people are coming from, when you say just do a meetup, if it's a really specialized one, if it's like OnyxCon, which is for the African diaspora, if it's WisCon, which is a feminist convention, if it's GayLaxicon, which is, just obviously aimed at gay people.
Or the GingerCon for just redheads. Seriously.
Yeah, but that one's not a science fiction convention. That's just a bunch of redheads getting together.
It's a fandom.
Anyway, the point being that those people come from all over. They're not just the people in your town. You're going to get 500, 1,000 people at something like that from all over the place. So you get to meet other people from other cities that are into the same thing you are, that are as into it as you are. Whereas if you're just looking at the pool of people in town, it's going to be like, okay, I've met 4 people here in town that may kind of sort of be into it, or 500 people from all over that are really into it.
I think the small ones don't get all over. It's still in a regionalized area. Like, let's say in Austin, you'll get maybe San Antonio, Houston, Dallas as far as people go.
I've been going to conventions since I was little, and every convention I've ever been to, I'd say about at least a third of the population of the convention has come from out of state, and about at least a tenth has come from out of the country.
Well, I was going to say, we just went to recently Chupacabra.
Yeah.
Second year.
Chupacabra's really, really tiny.
But it is very, very tiny. But it's also, Chupacabra had 30 guests. As the head of one of the companies pointed out, he had never seen a lineup before, ever, not even compared to Origins or Gen Con, which are the two big ones. So this was thing. Very, very big news for all of them because these were huge names in the industry that were there. But even though this was year 2, they were getting people from London, England. They were getting things because of their guests. Yes, the smaller conventions do start off smaller. I think Chupacabra is, I wouldn't say an exclusion to the rule, but it is doing something very different. But yes, generally smaller conventions do start off just in Austin, or maybe just in their local city. But they don't stay that way. If they're a well-run, well-maintained convention, they don't stay that way ever.
So
I
you're
think
telling me that in London they don't have a game convention like ChupacabraCon?
Not
They
with
may.
that specific set of guests.
But the guests, I want to say, yes, they do. And in many cases, some of them do get those level guests. But it's how the quality of that convention, how it's run, how it's maintained, everything. Rumors and stories of a convention spread, particularly because of the internet, so quickly.
Yay,
The
internet.
But yeah,
No, in
the
a good
ball
way,
pit.
in a really good way.
The ball
The
pit.
ball
is
pit.
it.
God, yes.
But look how bad that convention was. There's not going to be a second one.
Yeah.
Why? Because it was poorly maintained. ChupacabraCon got lots of news because of it. If a convention happens, good or bad, it will be known for it.
Yeah, like RTX, another
Yes.
good local one.
Right,
I
and-
feel like that's going to become our equivalent of PAX.
Yes.
It
RTX
already is.
amazing.
And they're wonderful. Like the people that run it are fantastic. I've had a great time every time I've been
We've
there.
had so much fun.
And people know that. It's growing exponentially every year, specifically because it has that reputation for it. And so
so-
reputation matters. I think some of the thing, again, there's nothing wrong with your perspective. I'm finding it fascinating as someone who's coming into these things really new. The comic conventions tend to have the same kind of roster of guests that sort of rotate around the country. So if you want to see the guys from Buffy and the
Yeah,
guys
they're
from
always the
Angel
same
and the
ones.
guys, yeah, so it doesn't really matter. You don't need to go to the Austin one versus the St. Louis one or whatever, because it's going to be the same people doing the same
But
stuff.
when we look at these little fan-run conventions, do you think they'd be anywhere near that successful if they weren't trying to crowdfund themselves? Because that's how they get their word out. Like, let's say ChupacabraCon decided to pay for it all themselves.
Well, they
Yeah,
can
that-
this year.
yeah, that's
Well,
you don't
as
know
an
how they
example.
run. Actually,
As an
you make your
example.
money by buying badges.
Yes, but a lot of them are now going towards the crowdfunding to get that word out, so people get the
No.
badges as part of crowdfunding. It does. Look around.
I think he's mostly right, somewhat.
I
the
haven't
crowd-
actually seen a bunch
Mostly.
of Kickstarters for these sort of things.
I've seen a lot of
There's
them.
a
I mean,
lot of them coming up now.
I guess I go to conventions that have been more established. So if your con's been around for more than 3 or 4 years, typically, you pay for it with badges. That's how you.
But if
that's how you always finance
go to the swag
conventions.
booth, if you go to the swag booth, particularly with a lot of flyers, you'll see, some con, and then you'll see the Kickstarter logo right on the bottom of it.
Yeah, so they're trying to kickstart it and get people to commit to badges that way, and then like what happened with the Tumblr con, where they had the ball pit.
Well, the other thing is though, that's also.
But that's also a brand new development.
Yeah.
But that also is one thing that Kickstarter is one part getting your thing funded, but there's another part of it altogether. It's also marketing.
Yes.
How many times have you gone to Kotaku, Polygon, IGN, and all these, and something on Kickstarter is on their page? It's marketing. It's, hey, did you guys see this video about this convention that's happening here in Austin? No. Then they watch the video, and then if they like it, they fund it. It's free marketing. It's free getting your name out there because now, in a way, you have an IP address to your convention.
And it's really effective. I mean,
Yeah.
the difference between the books that I've put out that have had a Kickstarter and the books that I've put out that haven't, the Kickstarter books tend to sell better, except for the Hobbit one, which was going to sell no matter what. But
Oh, yeah, it says
because the word gets out there, people, like you said, share it, things along those lines. But that's a really new development with these small conventions. That's not something they've been doing. Like the oldest convention in the U.S. is from the 1930s, PhilCon in Philadelphia. 1930s.
What do they do in 1930s? Watch those little stereographic pictures?
Well, it wasn't.
It's
it
called
wasn't about
literacy
media.
and
It was-
books
yeah,
and the dime
exactly.
store novels.
And so conventions have actually been around for almost over 100 years now, like about 85, 90 years.
Yeah, but the difference between back then is they weren't as populous as they are today. Like, you throw a
Yes.
rock, there's a convention happening every day somewhere here in Texas.
Well, when you say populist, I'm going to completely agree with you there because media fandom has made it a very mass appeal with cons these days. I feel that anybody that says, man, I'm so oppressed because I'm a nerd, people pick on me, like, really? Are you tuning in from 1984?
Yeah,
because,
probably.
I'm sorry, if your movies are making over $1 billion that are made to cater just to you, you are not the oppressed minority anymore. Sorry. And so that's what's really different, I think. I think that the little fan-run conventions tend to be people that have a small niche interest, like the bronies, as opposed to the people that are into
Let's
Marvel's
go pay $200
Avengers
to
and
go
Star
have some dude
Wars
sign a picture for me.
Exactly. So that to me is a lot of the culture difference between them. The mass appeal, the things that have been marketed to billions of people versus okay, maybe there's only 20 people. Anybody out there that likes Continuum, maybe you and I should have a convention.
Everyone take a shot. Continuum came up.
I mean, that being the
But
point that, like, if you have a super niche interest like that, that's the point of a small local con.
But at the same time, like, I think it's like anything. Smaller conventions can happen, and they happen a lot. As you said, there's a convention. I make a joke. There's a convention in Austin every weekend. You just need to look it up.
Literally, there is.
There is. We're not kidding. But at the same time, it's someone out there said, hey, let's do a small comic book convention. And then it became San Diego Comic-Con. Mm-hmm. There's somewhere out there, there's this paper trail you could find that will get you to that spiral. And I think part of it is, oh my God, look at all this money. Mm-hmm. And then they want to make more of that money. Then they want to make more of that money.
But that's something that has come in more recently as everything has become mass appeal. Like San Diego Comic-Con, it plateaued all through the 90s. It wasn't until Hollywood was like, oh wait, we can
show stuff
launch
there.
our movies there. All right, we're coming in. Dragon Con has also benefited from the media expansion. Gen Con is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Gen Con was really small for the longest time, and then they got picked up by a professional convention running group who's done fantastic with it, by the way. I really approve of what they're doing. And it exploded because they had professional management and not just local fan volunteers.
I think also part of it is, you said back in the day, and I agree, that it was like, there's like, there's 6 cons. There's, Dallas, San Francisco, Philly, New York.
Never been the case.
Well, I'm just saying, like, all the major cities.
Yeah,
but Dallas is going to be the major one.
It's like, what I think you're going for is it became an event to go to a convention. It's like,
Right.
oh, what are you going to do this weekend? I'm going to go to this convention because they have one every weekend. I think the luster of conventions has kind of lost it when you've got Wizard World in 3 different, we've got Houston, San Antonio, Dallas. You've got the big San Diego one that everyone flocks to every year that no one has any fun at. You've got Dragon Con, which is exploding. You've got a million little individual conventions going.
So here's the thing. Like, this is where con culture becomes important. No one expects you to go to all of them. You find the one with your people, and you go back to that one repeatedly.
But people go to all of them. That's
No,
what
they
we've
don't.
seen.
No, they
Yes.
don't. No, they don't.
Yes,
They really-
I have seen
it's
the same
super
people
expensive.
at Alamo City, at RTX, at
So maybe they go
Staple,
to 4 conventions a year, and those are the 4 they go to.
But they're
Yeah.
all the same type of conventions.
No, they're not.
Well, okay, yeah, Staples
No,
not,
okay,
but
no.
Alamo
Yeah.
City and
No.
Wizard World are
No.
pretty much the same. Yes, they
Okay.
are.
But I would say either of those and RTX are not the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Staple, RTX, I totally disagree with the same. Wizard World and the other one. You said.
Alamo
City.
City, Capital City, all
Alamo
those.
City, totally different.
No, it's not.
Here's
Okay,
what,
so
hold on.
here's the thing. His perspective on this is just he's only going for the guests in the media panels. He's not
True.
seeing
And
the
the
parts
people that
we're
we've
seeing.
been meeting at all these things, they've been the same guests. They've been the same people out in the conventions that we've run into multiple times and
But
had
you're
a great
seeing
time
the
with.
booth people. Yes, the
I'm also the
booths.
people at the convention. I've noticed that we're running into the same people.
Here's the thing, dude. You need to get out of Texas.
Oh, we do need to get out of
You,
Texas.
I mean, seriously.
We really need to get out of Texas.
So people there are plenty of people, having grown up in this culture, that will do a circuit of usually no more than 4 a year, because it does add up money-wise. And that's where you meet people that don't live in town. That's where you hang out with your friends that are from out of town. You look forward to it. You make it an event. For me, because I grew up in the Midwest, it was a little bit more spread out. So it'd be like
You're a
Tulsa,
Smallville girl.
Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Kansas City, things along those lines. So it's a little bit more of a drive. The thing about Texas is nobody gets out of Texas. There's a shock collar. If you try to pass the border, you're
well, it's
just not
because
allowed
if
to
we
go.
try to drive out of Texas, there's 3 conventions on the way. We're done. You know?
And so the thing is, you're only seeing one very specific regional type of fandom, and then you're assuming that represents all the fandom across
Why
the
wouldn't
entire
it?
country.
Because
No, I'm
Okay,
serious.
Chris-Rachael,
you can't say
you want
just
me to
in
take this
Texas.
one?
Please.
No, you
Okay.
cannot say just in Texas they'll go to everything, because California has a crap ton of conventions and they're going all to the same ones too. It's not just, you can't tell me it's just a Texas thing.
okay, one,
Yes, please.
You are assuming that because you've seen 7 or 8 of the same people that all of them are going.
It's not
no.
just 7 of 8 people.
But also, you're also talking 1 month's gaps between RTX and Alamo City and all these, so people have time to get money. 2, regions like different things. As an example, Texas is a Pathfinder town. It is all about Pathfinder. Yes, you can find a D&D. Yes, you can find maybe Savage Worlds. You can find other things. But every convention, you're going to have a Pathfinder. In the Midwest, it is all about Savage Worlds. In New York, it's all about traditional D&D. And all about the West Coast, it's all about
So there's
Vampire
a
the
geographic map based on what kind of RPG you like to play?
Not just RPGs, but other things as well. Like the East Coast science fiction, like Star Trek and whatnot conventions, they're much older than the ones in general that are further out. And so they tend to get a somewhat different crowd than other things. Like if you want to go to a literary convention, you're going to want to go probably East Coast. And I know that you personally
I'm just
don't.
like, literary
but the point
convention.
is, you're going to get a really different flavor in different parts of the country because they are locally run. They're run by people in a certain region that are into things, and you've only seen things that Texans like. And Texas really is not
So
representative
we can
of
go
the
to
entire
California and
US.
see things only Californians like every weekend. I mean, it's going to
Pretty
be the
much.
same thing. When do we get to the point where like, okay, we've had enough of conventions, let's cut it down so it becomes more of a
So was
major
the point of
event?
this episode for you that you just hate conventions?
No, I
and want
love
them to go
conventions.
away?
Okay,
but
I think
this
what
is just
you're-
how this developed.
What you're seeing is a lot of little conventions. What you're seeing is a lot of big conventions. So what you're asking is, when does the bubble pop?
Yes.
It already has. And then it didn't. And then it has. And it hadn't. Back in the 90s, every weekend, there was a comic book convention in this town. I ought to know I went to about 75% of them.
What are you doing this weekend, Pocky? Oh, I'm going to another comic convention. Weren't you there last weekend?
No,
not
this
at
is
all.
this is a different hotel. Then what happened? The comic book bubble popped. What happened to all those conventions? They went away. Till like 2 or 3 of them are left. Those were the good ones. Those are the ones that had more than just vendors and whatnot. Right now, we're in a media glutton.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we really are.
We have, as an example, you're taking away from my Hell's Kitchen time right now because Netflix just gave me all of Daredevil.
Which is awesome.
And then what happens later is I'm going to have all of Iron Man. And I'm going to have all of Power Man. Right now, this summer, we're having almost every major comic book character is getting a movie. What was last summer? Oh, almost every other comic book character is getting a movie. Television, again, we're having almost everything we want. We have everything from the Headless Horseman, meaning one of the four horsemen of the
Don't
apocalypse.
start on Sleepy Hollow. We'll have to
I
take
love
another
me some
shot.
Sleepy Hollow.
To right now, Black Orphan's getting a new season. We're getting all this stuff.
Oh, Orphan Black, I cannot wait.
So,
Black Orphan. I was
sorry. That was
Orphan
an
Black, we know what he
Orphan
meant.
Black. Sorry.
The
but
point, though, is that,
yeah, we're getting this big bubble.
And it's a natural thing. What happens is you get a whole bunch of these small conventions, and then different people are running them. And the ones that do well, people go back to, and the ones that do poorly go away. And you want that. That's like any other type of business. We ended up with Heinz ketchup after you would not believe the type of ketchups that were out there before we settled on tomato. There was mushroom ketchup. There was like crazy ketchups. The point is, you try a bunch of different things, see what works, see what people like. Everything else fails, and that's what wins.
And then also you wait for your media bubble to pop. Because, like Magic and all the other stuff, eventually it's going to get too big and it's going to fall. It will
Although
not
there's still
complete.
people playing Magic.
No, but I'm saying like I'm not meaning Magic in the sense, but like Magic, like there were actually whole Magic conventions. There still are. Nowhere near the number that it was back in the 90s. Nowhere near the comic book. I mean, there was how many during the biggest run of Doctor Who during the 80s. There were tons of Doctor Who conventions.
And now there's a handful.
There's
in
a
the
handful.
US.
There's a couple.
I can't remember the one
that
that
was
just on the East Coast.
Yes.
I feel bad. Regeneration Who.
Regeneration Who.
Generation Who.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole bunch of things. And is Doctor Who getting popular? Yes. But at the same time, a lot of these conventions are getting really smart. Comic book convention right now, as it sits, just taking comic books as a whole, does not exist. Because you don't make your money back. But also, if you run a pure Doctor Who convention, you can make some of your money back. If you run a pure Supernatural, Sherlock, or any other of these shows convention, they probably won't make their money back. What you have to do is make what I call the Chimera Beast of conventions. You're going to have a panel for Doctor Who, a panel for Sherlock, and a panel for this, and a panel for that.
But I approve of that because most people like a bunch of different things.
Right.
I mean, if you're super obsessed with just the one show, okay, maybe you should. There's that's great, but there's other stuff out there. Try it as well. And so
Yeah.
you do see a lot of conventions like Sherlock, Doctor Who, and Supernatural. Those three in particular are
Yes.
like this trifecta adored by Tumblr. And you see overlapping panels with them all the time. And that's great. That's catering to the audience that wants to do things involving all three of them.
Right. And
Which then takes it away from the fan convention. It becomes more of a media convention.
These
it's
things
still-
are evolving back and forth over time, though.
But isn't it still the same product?
Eh.
Okay, it's a
Okay,
young,
here's,
it's
here's
a young
the fundamental
adult.
difference between the fan conventions and the media conventions.
Mm-hmm.
Hotel, convention center. If it takes place at a hotel, you're probably going to have a nightlife, you're going to have room parties, you're going to have...
Room parties.
Well,
no, he's never been, so he has no idea
He
what he's
does,
talking
trust
about with
me.
that, seriously. I'm not even going to bother trying to explain because you
I know,
are so...
I know.
Yeah. So anyway, so you'll have that nightlife that people can go to and enjoy, and that's where you really meet people. If you have a comic convention or any type of
At a
convention
convention
that's just
center.
at a convention center, you bring your own friends. You don't really talk to strangers that much because you are there to stand in line in order to pay $50 to $200 for somebody's signature on a picture, and then to go to the giant nerd mall, and then to get out. That's all they really want at the convention center cons. That's almost all you've been to, so I can see why you're like, why are there so many of these things? It's a waste of time. Because those that I don't really enjoy them, other than RTX, which is at a convention
Yes.
center. They do an unusually good job.
But I think there is, to say that you have these two circles and they don't do that nice little.
They really don't intersect much.
Well,
it's a
some-
very small Venn diagram.
It is
But,
a
but I'm
very
saying
small
there is a very small, but I think when you have that small and it's there, that's where you have RTX, that's where you have Gen Con, and that's where you have like Dragon Con and a couple other ones. The reasoning that I say that they are that mix is because if you try to put RTX into a hotel, I would giggle because it would be like watching a water balloon pop.
Yeah.
Well, okay, here's the thing. RTX, if you wanted to take the South by Southwest model, could definitely, like, you could fit it in the Hilton. You could fit it in.
They're actually expanding into the Hilton.
Oh, really?
This year they're expanding into
Yeah.
the Hilton.
Congratulations to them. I'm
Yeah.
glad it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
Well, we're gonna be there, guys. Video, trust us.
The real point being that what I'm talking about is getting that nightlife, getting the whole people getting together. Because if you're at a convention center, A, it's mostly attracting locals, as you've complained about, and B, you're not getting. Even if you're local, if you're not staying there, you're missing out on a lot of the experience. You're missing out on the whole, okay, we're all waiting in line because the restaurant's full and now I'm talking to a stranger.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like that big a deal, but that's where you make your friends. You make your line friends and whatnot. And that has been stripped away. All of the actual social aspect of it has been stripped away at the media conventions, and that's why the fan conventions are so valuable and precious.
So I agree. Fan conventions should probably be. I'm a little worried that if the bubble pops, we'll see a lot less of those and a lot more of the media conventions. Because we've been to media conventions, and you see, we all get frustrated about it, but we have the most fun at the smaller ones, like
Right. I know they'll pop,
Chupacabra Con. And,
but they'll pop, and then the thing is like anything, yeah, you'll see a lot of death, but then you're like, if you stop for like all of 10 seconds to go, oh, that convention died, and then you think back, did you actually go to that convention? Do you even remember that convention? No.
I was totally waiting for you to flick your hand. And go, oh my God, 10 seconds, they died.
They died, but at the same time, it is like right now with all through those three shows. When those conventions have their bubble and they pop, they're in the middle of their bubble right now and they pop. What's going to happen to them? They're going to get replaced by something else.
Because the nerds are still there.
The
Yeah.
nerds
The
will always
nerds
be
are still
there.
there, and they want a community. Like, I would say that with Dragon Con in particular, it hasn't popped yet, but Atlanta fandom is massive, and
It
they have
is.
spun off a ton of smaller conventions for that very purpose. They're very, very niche conventions, so you've got, like, an adults-only Frolicon out there. You've got
Frolicon.
You've got a steampunk convention out there.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of LARPs out there. You've got a burlesque convention. All those people still go to Dragon Con, but it's too big as far as that, so they want that experience of just being on their
we
own.
like fan conventions, and it's good that they exist because you do get to meet people. And
Yeah.
we probably should go to some more fan conventions than we do. But overall, I guess what I'm taking away from this is fan conventions are really, really the way to go if you're passionate about something.
Yes.
It's worth flying. Like, Michelle, who's been on the show several times, flies out to Gallifrey 1 every year, meets people in LA that she's never going to get a chance to see anywhere
Yeah.
else. I would love to do that if I had the money. Maybe some of you should buy my exciting Doctor Who cookbook or think about it if that could help finance me getting
Everyone
out
take
there.
a shot.
But the point being that, like, it does cost money to fly to go to something along those lines. Emerald City Comic Con is one that people have been flying to for a while, stuff along those lines. So
Fest, yeah.
yeah, and so it's worth finding that one community, even if you only see those people once a year. I've known plenty of people, a lot of people actually, that met someone at a convention out of town, moved and got married.
I mean, the other thing about some of these large fan conventions is that's their holiday. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
going to, like, because I have a new job, I got a new job, I don't want to say where, but I got a new job that's going to pay me very well.
He's flipping
Me and my
hamburgers.
wife are already planning to go to Gen Con next year because now I can afford it.
All right, so we'll get out there and explore some more fan conventions. And for those of you who are on the fence about what you should do, if you want to go shopping, go to a media convention. If you want to go have fun and meet people, go to a fan convention.
I would agree with that. The
Yeah.
nerd ball aspect is definitely superior at all of the media conventions because that's what they're there for, is to get your money.
Yes.
So, if you enjoyed this, comment in the comments below and let us know your thoughts on conventions. But right now, we're going to get ready for me to take on the Marvel Cinemaverse and how it's spoiling all of us horribly, horribly well in Stone Takes On.